Mr. Novoneel Chakraborty in conversation with Mr. Ravi Shankar. Can we have both of them, the consulting editor for Sunday's Standard? So let's hear it for them. Let's make some noise for Mr. Chakraborty, the prolific author of 19 best-selling novels, e-novelia, and a best-selling short story collection, with his work being translated into multiple Indian languages. Almost all his novels have debuted in top 3 Nielsen listing across India. His Forever series made it to Times of India's most stunning books of 2017, while the Stranger trilogy became a phenomenal hit amongst the young adult, with Amazon tagging it, along with his erotic thriller, Black Suits You, as their memorable reads of the year. Selling over 2 million copies, he's India's most popular thriller novelist, known for his solid plotting, unpredictable twist, and strong female protagonist. He is also referred to as the Sidney Sheldon of India by his readers. Apart from novels, he has written and developed several hit TV and original web shows for premium channels like MX Player, Sony, Star Plus, Z, and Z5. So I'll request Mr. Ravi Shankar to take this forward.
Welcome, Naman. He doesn't need any introduction. The applause was good enough. I want to ask you something. The Stranger Murders, the other books. The Stranger is a recurrent theme in your novel. Is it because you want to imbue the sense of mystery from the beginning? Or is it because, do you feel a stranger in your own stories?
Am I audible? Hello? Yeah, okay. Firstly, thank you for having me here. It's amazing to be back in Bhubaneswar. I was here before this year as well. Stranger, yeah, I feel because our social dynamics has been changing of late, and it's every day, I think, either through the social media or in real life, we end up meeting so many people whom we don't know about much. And whatever we know of them is via this perception that we develop just as we interact with them. So I guess that's what kind of, when I wrote the Stranger trilogy also, was in my mind that we meet a lot of people socially, social media-wise, but we don't really know them, and that kind of becomes interesting when you end up and try to put it in a crime thriller, because it's such a mind play as well. You think you know a person, but you don't know. We don't know a person even if we live with them, but how do we know a person when they're just a social media connection away? So that way I felt that the Stranger thing was kind of very relatable for everybody, because we all have them in our life some way or the other. So that's the basic why I keep having these themes in my books.
When you write a book, there's a part of the writer goes into the book, is what I believe or I hear. A part of it, the writer dissociates his personal history or his himself from the book, his identity from the book. So in your books, do you find you as a stranger writing a story? Or is it you as Novoneel writing the story?
So because thankfully I've ended up writing 19-20 books, so it's also a process of discovery for me. When I started, I was 23 when my first book came out, and obviously I was not aware of myself as much as I'm aware of myself now. So it has been a growing process, and somewhere, people try to understand sometimes the author through their work as well, not knowing that even the author is trying to discover himself or herself through his own works. You grow as a person, you have experiences in life, because as the art that you are expressing is growing year by year, the person also is growing somewhere, and that reflection is there. It can be less, it can be more, depending on how much you are consuming everything around you and kind of expressing yourself through your art. But I feel it's such a intimate process of you and your art, and I have felt it from the time when I was 23, and when you are in your early 20s, you're very arrogant in a very foolish way. You think you know it all, and I suppose it happens to everybody, more or less. But as you grow and you reach your 30s and mid-30s and 40s, and you realize that there is an ocean of things that you need to know, you know, and you're just constantly collecting things from people around you, people you meet, readers' feedback. And there's two elements that come to your work. One is obviously a style that grows over the time, which your readers like about you, because that's why they are picking up the book that you're writing. Every time you come out with a book, there are certain loyal readers. They're loyal because they find something interesting, which eventually is called the signature style, you know. But that's also can be a little limiting, because every time you want to break it, because after writing n number of books as a writer, you want to break something and explore something else also. The same loyal readers may not allow you or accept you, you know, in that regard, because it happened with J.K. Rowling as well. Now, everybody wants her to write a Harry Potter, and they will not give her a chance to, even if her other books are great or good or whatever, that's for someone to read and decide. There is a whole section of loyal Harry Potter fans who just wants that one thing from her. And it's a little unfair, I feel, because, you know, as writers, as storytellers also, you have this thing of, if I like, I've been writing thrillers from a long time, but sometimes I feel like, you know, venturing out into a lighter book, you know, a romance maybe, or a children's book. But I know that my loyal readers may not, and every time they will read it, they will like, but sir, this book is not like that. But it will not be like that, because, you know, the other book was different.
No, the Cormoran Grant series did well. So, I mean, you're a star, so I'm sure that, you know, your readers will kind of back you up. To take this stranger metaphor forward, there's a lot of darkness in your books, the dark underbelly of things, the dark underbelly of the human psyche, the social situation, the crime situation. What is it necessary, or let me put it this way, it's very common for writers who write in this particular genre to explore the darkness in the world, the darkness in people. So why is it that as a writer feel drawn to this darkness, or do you feel drawn to this darkness?
So I feel, for me personally, I feel I love writing and exploring human beings, you know, and I also feel that people who read or watch content on television or OTT or cinema halls or theaters, they are there to watch or see or read about human beings, you know. And somewhere I feel, though we don't talk about it, I think authors are a little warped and twisted. Somewhere, you know, there's a small brain somewhere which is warped and twisted. Maybe it's not in our conscious self, or maybe it is, we don't express it, you know. So that's what kind of draws us into this dark zone where we want to ourselves see what a human being is capable of in a certain situation. And that's what makes it interesting to read, because if as a thriller writer or a normal writer who's writing different genres, if I end up writing about emotions which are there, you know, we are seeing it every day, there will be a relatability, but I feel, you know, a thriller has to have certain shock elements as well, you know, and when I say shock element, doesn't mean that I have to deliberately keep them to shock the readers, but those are elements that come up from, you know, the society we live in. Most of my thriller novels have been inspired by real life incidents, you know, and real life incidents, real life crime is dark. I mean, it's not light. So I feel, I think authors are a little warped and twisted, so that's why they kind of like that zone. And there's something about dark things that people at large also, you know, are very eager about, curious about.
So it calls to their own darkness?
Yeah, I guess. And maybe it's also that using that darkness, they also see their own darkness somewhere. Yeah, because reading is such a personal thing, you know, where you bought a book, you go to your bedroom, you open the book and read. And even if you connect to a certain darkness written in the book, you don't need anybody's, you don't have to hide anywhere, because you know you are relating. So there's no, public stigma attached to it that someone will know that you're relating to certain dark elements within the book, which makes the reading experience very different from everything else, you know. So that could be one. For me, it's definitely, I love human psychology. I love how people unpredictably react in situation. We have a set notion that, you know, if this is a situation, this is how I'm going to react. You know, we are all very moralistically correct till things happen to us.
So, do you think you could commit a crime? Do you think you want to murder somebody?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
I said, do you want to murder anybody? Do you want to commit a crime?
I don't know. I mean, I think we all are potential killers in some way, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, because, and for me, because I'm expressing it, so that urge is going away, I guess. But there is because art as an expression also kind of relays you of something that is growing in your head also. It's like, because art is an expression, you know. So some people, you know, paint and feel relieved. You know, some people create music to go to their dark zone and feel relieved. And for me, it's, you know, writing it out there, and I think storytellers also live in a fantasy world, you know, and in our fantasy world we can be anything.
No, the theory of many philosophers is that man is capable of doing anything, especially murder. So do you think you will be able to kill somebody and not get caught? Sorry, it's a frivolous question, but I mean, I thought I need to ask you. Now we talk about darkness. You know, I remember a long, old conversation I had with P.D. James in a London house, and we were talking about the contrast between Agatha Christie and her works and works of that kind. So we generally had this interesting insight about Christie's books as, he said, you know, the friendly neighborhood murderer. You know, he's not dark in an obvious way. The setting is pleasant, a country house, you know, which is actually given the birth later to the cozy novel mysteries and stuff like that. While on the other hand, though they're very similar settings, Smith's books are also very similar settings, you know, England, they are dark, all right? So do you, if you were given a choice, would you be able to write a friendly neighborhood murder story?
So I've already written a book which is kind of light-hearted thriller is what I'm calling it, which might come out next year. But why not? I mean, for me, it's not the genre or the subgenre of crime, you know, because friendly neighborhood murder comes in a very subgenre of a crime thriller. For me, what generally attracts me is what's the human story that I'm telling. You know, and if that human story is interesting enough, is keeping me engaged in my mind, then I'll attempt it for sure. Because everything else, whether it's a friendly neighbor story or a corporate murder, you know, or a very light-hearted, like a Thursday Murder Club, you know, a quirky murder thing, everything else happens later on. First is, what is that human story I'm going to say, and is it hooking enough for me? Because if it has to come from me. If I'm not hooked enough, then I don't think the readers will be hooked when they read the book. So for me, it's very important that is that idea or the thought and the emotion that I'm going to explore in a story, is it something that's not leaving me, and is it kind of pushing me to explore it more and more? And then everything else, whether the genre or it's a friendly neighborhood, then that's a milieu basically, you know. We can set it up the way we want to. But the basic thing is, what is that human story that I'm going to say?
You know, all your books, nearly all your books, have been adapted into on the screen. Some, I think, you've written the story yourself. Yes. How does it translate? I mean, is it better when you write it yourself, or do you? I mean, the usual cliched question. I mean, do you lose part of it, or do you gain part of it, or what you lose, do you gain another way? I mean, how does it translate on the screen? How faithful it is to your intention?
So the adaptation process, right?
The adaptation.
Yeah. So I've been fortunate enough that like almost 4 or 5 of my books have been adapted on screen. But I was very excited when the first book was about to be adapted. And then from then on, I was very scared that my books are going to be adapted, because in India, adaptation is kind of a scam, I guess. You know, because we don't know how to adapt a particular literary work on screen, is what my personal belief and understanding is. You know, obviously there's no grammar to it, but yet, having said that, there's no grammar, there is something which you need to, and that's why the West does an amazing work on an average by adapting, you know, certain thrillers and all. What I felt was, because people who want to adapt a book, they themselves have so much of ego that they want to make it their story. Yeah. You know, and in the end, they want to make what they think the story should be and not what the story is. And thereby, I feel they go away from the truth of the novel, you know. My only point is, if you are taking up a novel to adapt, why don't you just stick to it? You know, otherwise you can create an original idea and make a screenplay out of it or a show out of it. So if you take a book, I think the truth of the book has to reflect in you can change the way it looks. You know, you can change the approach, how you want to shoot it or the look wise, but the truth of the book has to be there. So in a way, I'm a little I have been a little disappointed with the adaptations, not only of my books, other books, because I keep reading books which get adapted also of Indian writers and other writers that, and just because it's a learning experience, because how to, what was taken, what was not taken, how interesting one thing has been done. But overall, for me, it has been till now, it has been a little disappointing exercise.
There are obviously, there are two genres of crime fiction. One is the detective novel, and the other, or story, and the other is the thriller. Now there is this subgenre called the erotic thriller. I don't think you're entirely an erotic writer, but what would you classify your thing mainly as a thrillers, right? Would you like to differentiate between those two, and what would you prefer if you were to write the other one, which the other part of it?
So in my head, I'm always writing thrillers, but I have to call it romantic thrillers because my publisher says that sells. So for the people, it's romantic thrillers, but in my head, it's always thrillers. And I had an experience of, I've only written one erotic thriller in my life called Black Suits You. And I understood very quickly that in India, you should not be writing erotic thrillers because that word has a connotation for everybody, and that connotation is so different from everyone that they begin to label you as in a different corner, And it's not only for the readers, even for people who are in the Hindi film industry who want to adapt books, even they start labeling it as such because I don't know. It's just, and that's why I guess in India, erotic novel is not written only. And even in the West, most of the popular erotic novelists are women. Hardly there's a man writing erotica. Yeah. At least I don't know one. So, so when in India someone writes in that too in English, because obviously English is not our mother tongue when we, write things, people, I don't know, they have a very weird way of, they will read the book, maybe hiding the book somewhere, but they will not come out clean and support the author saying that I enjoyed your book. They will criticize it and yet will read it for their own pleasure. So there is a kind of a dichotomy that I understood writing erotica and erotic novels. So I just wrote one and I was like, that's it. I'm not going to write any more erotic novels here. But in my mind, I generally write thrillers. But yeah, because we have to market it. And in India, people love romance. Because I think everyone's heart is broken, so people relate to romance much. But in my head, I never write novels. It's always thriller. Having said that, obviously in every book of mine, the core basic basis is relationship. Because as I said, I love to tell human stories. Because thrillers, even without any emotional arc or emotional journey, I think if someone is paying $200, $250 to buy my book, and I don't take that person on an emotional journey as he or she reads the book, then I fail as a writer. For me, anyone who opens the book has to be sucked into my world and be given that emotional journey. Whether the journey is, and roller coasters are of different kinds. Some are very high, some are low. But they are roller coasters nevertheless. So it's my duty as a writer to give them, and because I'm a commercial fiction writer, it's my duty to give them that joy of making them believe when they close the book that it was worth reading the time. Obviously not everyone will enjoy it, but exponentially, if people enjoy it more, then some people are waiting for your next book.
Okay, so I remember the process of writing crime. I remember Raymond Chandler, one of the greatest and the masters. Yeah. He said that whenever he's stuck when he's writing the middle of a story, it was a famous essay of his on writing crime. He said, all you do is to have a man come in through the door and pull out a gun, if you remember that. Do you have similar situations when you're writing?
Maybe I think it stemmed out of how to avoid a writer's block or something like that. If you're stuck in a story.
I don't believe that.
But I guess I don't have a particular that way that you always create a suspense with a man and a gun. But I know what he means by that. Yeah. But for me, I think because I always I'm very polygamous with stories, so I always have 5 stories running, in my head. So what I do is, if at all I get stuck somewhere, I jump onto another story. And by the time I come back, the mind, I think it's a matter of perspective also. Mm-hmm. Sometimes you lose perspective in your own story. So for that, I think you just need to take a back step. And it happens in relationship also. If you're too much with someone, you need a break, you just take a space out and then come back and you see the same things which was bothering you suddenly doesn't bother you, and you have knowledge enough to handle how to handle that situation. So for me, when I take a step back and go to another story and come back to the story that I was stuck in, somewhere it opens up, and so I don't have a particular, a formula for that. But, and I think also sometimes my thing with writer blocks is that whenever I'm stuck in a story, something, generally writers, it's a very lonely job. You have to just, stick in your bedroom and write. So I think meeting people, talking about few random things also sometimes opens up your mind.
Okay, so many of the writers, successful writers, crime writers particularly, whether it be Christie, greats like Conan Doyle, even the American guys, they have a formula, right? Either somebody goes to the detective when he's least expecting it, or they go to this, or they find themselves, and the settings are similar. It's a country house, or it is. In your book, I'm not being offensive. There's a formula. As in any, that's why I said, even the others. It is somebody whom you don't know. There's always somebody who's not what he is or she is. I mean, that's an intrigue which attracts people. Do you think that formula has worked for you? Do you plan to change it? Because there is repetitive aspect of the formula. It's interesting because the stories change, but the formula is there.
I think, the formula that you're talking about, sometimes it's a very subconscious thing that happens, because it will not happen if you write 3 books or 4 books. It will happen if you end up writing 10 plus, because with thrillers, what happens, because so many people are, consuming content on OTT and so many thrillers, you have to be original all the time, and that's a pressure. So to be original and also to keep continuing writing, and also you want the books to sell because there is a loyal audience, as I said. Somewhere the formula is also the signature style that people like, They come to you because they know that this is the world. This is his world, And people will be unpredictable. There will be this thing. So I think that's why, even if it's a formula, it's not a conscious effort, but maybe a subconscious, a pattern happens. A lot of writers who have written 10 plus books will have a pattern. Even Stephen King does. Everyone has a pattern. Sometimes it works, sometimes, again, as you said, that depends on the story also. Yeah. Because the plot has to be intriguing, the character has to be very intriguing. And somewhere in between, I keep breaking it by writing a drama, like a Half-Torn Hearts and, a school. So I try to keep playing with the subgenres also at times. So that even if the formula is there, it doesn't seem very evident because the world is different, the character is different, the milieu is different. And hence the unpredictability also kind of differs.
Okay, now in the new the mood of the age, American fiction, British fiction, they're predominantly, dominated by female journalists. Crime investigators, private or non-private. So women are the people who are kind of cracking the crime. They go through the same violence the men would have done. They commit the same things. And India, it's not really gone to that level. Maybe police women, maybe because uniform is like to be patriarchal, sexy. Do you think that trend is going to really pick up in India? The female detective as an action figure?
I think it is there in India. People are writing about female protagonists who are detectives and trying to solve crimes. But I think a lot of it depends on the kind of social design that we all come from. And that's where, otherwise, if you end up writing, something which is a very alien concept, in India, even for real, there are very few real women detectives, Yeah. And not only there are few, lot of people don't even know them. Not only detectives, but even in crime investigators in general, crime journalists and all. So I feel it's also a kind of offshoot of what is happening around you in the society. I think the more women take part in society, like more women become crime journalists, slowly that shift will come into literature also. Then we will see, because in a lot of OTT shows and all, the women are taking charges, and I feel the more we see it happening for real, the more it will be kind of aped by the authors in their books.
Delhi Crime and Ari are the only two things I can think of which, the women are very strong, this thing. Now, I think your main contribution so far has been, you're young, you're a young writer, and you have been able to create a large young audience and to bring the thriller, especially the Indian thriller, which is new, comparatively newer, word to the youth. I think that is one of your major contributions, I mean, I personally think, and it goes beyond the romantic or the erotic or whatever. What's your next phase in adulthood? Yeah, what's the next phase for the adult? I mean, adult means no longer so young. Yeah.
So I remember from when I debuted in 2008 till now, crime or thriller writing in India, especially in the English language, was so something had to happen because we're talking about thrillers. So,
Okay.
so yeah, I mean, the crime thing.
So sorry. Thank you.
So it was a fight with the publishers also, because everyone wanted, as I said, romance sells and all. It was my personal fight that, why don't you just give them? I think people presume a lot about readerships. People presume that, this is what, if they have liked this, please give them 20 more of this kind of things. I kind of don't, believe in that, because it's always, you don't know how the readers will react to something fresh, something new, and that's the challenge, that's the adventure we all love, So for me, yes, right now the thriller market has definitely opened up, and I see new writers coming into thriller zone and everything. But the next step is me also. I want people now, the youth that has connected to me through the thriller novels, they kind of shift to serious crime writing, crime thriller writing, basically.
Like noir.
Yeah, noir, and which is more not on a surface level crime, but when we go a step deeper into the psychology, the motives, the world, that I believe is my next thing, and that I would love my readers to be with me on that.
So would you like to leave the comfort of your métier and venture into science fiction or science fiction crime, time travel crime, which is quite, okra in foreign.
So I don't know, again, science fiction genre, anything, as I said, if I get a story a story strikes, or an idea strikes, which I feel is interesting, and it's kind of being with me throughout, I'll definitely kind of attempt. I am dying to write a children's thriller, like I call it the toddler thriller.
Catch them young.
Yeah, very young, which less than 10 years can read.
Kind of dangerous. You're implanting criminal thoughts in their
And
minds.
that has not happened, actually. That has not happened. But I have few ideas, and I'm trying to write that and see if kids like it. And it is also on a bigger aspect that I want little kids that the habit of reading should be inculcated in them from when they are young, because it cannot suddenly come at the age of 24. It has to come at the age of 6 or 7,
That's
8.
a good idea. Talking murder, I think Diksha is going to kind of murder me if I continue this, by the both of us. Yeah. So it's been a fantastic discussion. It was a
Thank you so
pleasure
much.
talking to you.
Thank you.
Pleasure
Thank you.
talking.
Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you.